Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Hello, everybody. And you could probably note the roll, sure. Sounds good. And all the approval of the agenda. Thank you, Hal. Dr. Oster seconds. Is anybody here from the public that would like to make any public comment? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go right on to approval of the minutes from December 11th, 2024. Did you have a chance to read those?
I read the minutes. I moved to approve.
I have.
Yes, sir.
Second, please.
Second that, Hal second that. Old business, and we'll go right on to the ED renovation and Joe.
The ED renovation project will be going to the Assembly Finance Committee on the 8th for appropriations. From there, it'll move back to the full committee, is my understanding. Kim and Aaron have helped me draft kind of a one-page summary of the project, why we're doing it, try to get justification where we are with funding. So hopefully we'll answer any of the questions. I'll be at the meeting. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them at the meeting. We've also worked with, I've reached out to Katie and she's has Kevin Darnell trying to work with the state to help move the CON forward, but there hasn't been any updates on that as well.
So you have talked to someone recently about the CON?
Just Katie getting Kevin Darnell, the city lobbyist, to help move forward, but I haven't heard nothing from him.
So what I'm worried about is we're going to go to the assembly, and the assembly is not going to appropriate the funds to us, correct, until we have the CON.
Potentially. I mean, we could talk about, I could try to answer that question when I get to it, because I mean, if they appropriate it and the CON is declined, then they could just de-appropriate the funds and pull it back into general operating. But to even start the process, because they take 2 meetings to get the appropriation done, the CON gets approved in the middle. Once we want the letter of the two to be what the starting point for the CMAR process, is my understanding. So ideally, they appropriate the funds, and then when the CON is approved, we can start rolling that ball.
I believe too, we should also make sure that we're talking with the assembly as they go to appropriate these funds and tell them kind of the same thing that we're talking with the state. We were approved for a much bigger project. The CON was already approved. We actually had our funds, if I'm not mistaken, have also already been appropriated for a much bigger project. We decided not to do the project. We're coming up with a smaller project, more fits our needs. Should be no reason why this shouldn't go through fairly smooth.
I could try to talk to them. We have a meeting on the 6th at the 10 for the union, or get the union ratified. So I'll try to take that opportunity to go in a little early and chat with some of the assembly as well.
Anybody else have any questions, Joe, concerning this?
No, I mean, that's my understanding, is that we scale down. It's like, why would they not appropriate the scale down? So it's the state is the major problem, right? More than the city. It's fine.
Well, I think that there's definitely a stumbling block there, and I think that the city is going to definitely want to see the CON, and I think that I've spoken to the finance chair briefly about this, and she just made sure she mentioned it to me that the assembly has not appropriated this project. So with that, kind of makes me concerned, and you know that I think with the changes that we had in 2024 with the scaling back some programs and stuff like that, I think they're going to be very cautious with us on what they appropriate for us, they deem necessary. So I just really think that we need to ensure that when Joe talks with the assembly, or when any of us talk with the assembly members, mayor, or anybody, Katie, you tell them how important that this project is moving forward, and it's a scaled down project of just what we actually really need. You know, that's how I feel.
Mr. Chair, just for kind of information, last week I received a phone call from one of our assembly members, Maureen Hall, asking me specifically that she was going into a meeting last Monday. I believe it was Monday, to discuss the ED project and ask for my opinion on it. And I said, it's a scale that it's just what we
Right.
discussed here, that this is necessary. It's a safety issue. I outlined the safety issues that we've discussed over and over again, the med prep, the visibility, the negative pressure rooms, and the
Safety, sorry.
the psych safety. Yes, I outlined all of that for her. So hopefully she went into whatever meeting she was going to, and with the understanding that this is not, something just to make it a shiny new space. It's critical for the safety of our providers, our staff, and our patients. So.
I think that's great because we've had a change in new assembly members, so any chance, and they forget sometimes because
This project has been through so many iterations. It's anytime we can talk to them
one-on-one is great rather than laying it all out
at that meeting. So
little. Yeah, I think that's great. The fact that you're talking finance as well.
Absolutely.
The cover memo we put together tries to illustrate all those bullet points as to why. So most of the document pertains to safety issues, negative pressure rooms, the impacts from our aging population, impacts from the cruise industry on the ER. So we tried to put it all in a concise format for them. So hopefully it answers all those questions that it's worth.
That's good. Thank you. Anything else on the update? And then we'll go on into the project update and Gene. Hey, Gene here.
Good afternoon through the chair. This is Nate Rumsey. I'm here on behalf of Gene, who unfortunately got double booked for this period and is meeting with the city manager right now. So if you don't mind, I'll take the project updates on her behalf.
Thank you. Hey, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Same to you. Just real quickly, as you see in the packet here and on the screen, I'll quickly run through these projects. Projects currently in closeout. We're wrapping up just a few lingering warranty issues on the CT scanner MRI project. Those are being addressed, but otherwise we're actively working to start closing that CIP out. For projects under construction, the ground floor asbestos abatement project has moved much faster than we originally anticipated, which is great. They did find some additional mold as they were doing their abatement. That work is wrapping up. And there's some discussions about, whether there might be an opportunity to knock out some additional work while the contractors mobilize, but that's still just in consideration at this point. Otherwise, we're anticipating being substantially complete with the work here very shortly. And just to point out, 3 months prior to the original contract completion date. So that's great. For projects that are in procurement right now, the Wildflower Court fuel tank installation, we're anticipating the bid opening for that next week on January 9th. For the life safety condition assessment, we're just wrapping up the pre-bid checklist and putting together a project timeline to get that procurement out, to get that advertised. On the ED project, the only thing I would add to what Joe provided as an update, and Joe, I can confirm that we have received the letter that you sent in or the memo that you sent in, and that will be included as a part of the AFC packet for next week, is that we've continued to touch base with the contractors that participated in phase 1 of the CMAR procurement process to make sure that they remain interested. Sometimes when there's a long gap between phase 1 and phase 2, we might have to consider reperforming the phase 1 of the procurement, but they've all continued to express interest. And at this point, we anticipate once we get the go ahead from Bartlett, and the funds are set aside and the certificate of need is in place, that we'll be able to move directly on to phase 2. So we're trying to do everything we can to keep the ED project on schedule once it gets the green light. Also in design, the Wildflower Court sidewalk replacement. We're hoping that we can get that bid out within the next month or so. By the next time we have the planning committee meeting, we'll provide an additional update on that. And then the surge protection phase 2, Bartlett's just working out a few issues to make sure that the outage plan makes sense. And otherwise we can get that project moving forward. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to take them. Otherwise, thanks for letting me provide some updates today.
Thank you, Nate. Is there any questions for Nate? Chris? Nope. All right, Nate, thank you. Thank you very much. Master Facilities Plan, Joe.
So this is something me and Deb had touched base on last month. So we've included the master facility plan that was updated in June of 21, I believe was the last update to this. I've gone through and reviewed it. So one of the things we talked about at the last meeting is whether staff would have the ability to go through and try to prep some of the stuff. I was hoping there would be more detail in the plan as to why some of the decisions were made the way they were, but there's not a lot of background into the stuff. It kind of gives you a high level plan, not the why behind it that kind of me and Deb discussed. It doesn't go over industry standards for space requirements for our population, which is kind of what we were hoping for to be the base for the next steps of this, if that makes sense. So how we move forward with this, I guess, would be up to discussion for the board. Continue on with.
I know our president has expressed to me very much that she wants a new master facilities plan done mid-year. So I think offline we'll get together and come up with a plan on how, you know, us and Kim will all work together and recreate something with industry standards and everything. I think that's what our president's doing.
Yes, basically, the last time that a study like this is performed was 2011. That's more than a decade ago. Industry standards have changed, technology has changed, and the environmental, both the governmental and other environmental pressures have changed what we might prioritize. So I think it's critical that, in my opinion, that we move forward with another outside analysis of what our space is, what our space needs are based on our the priorities that we've set forth in our strategic plan, and go from there.
Preparation for that, I have reached out to Virginia Mason to see if they had any suggestions for companies that can help with this process, as well as our GPO to see if there's anyone they have contracted already. I haven't received any feedback yet.
So this is going to be one of the main goals. I'm sorry, Elkhart.
Oh, well, let you finish on that. Well, I wanted to bring up a topic we're talking about buildings and infrastructure, concrete, and these kind of concrete things, concrete used in a sense. But there's another issue that's very relevant to our planning, and that is the issue that you probably read about in the newspaper, that Search is now taking over Southeast Medical. And that's going to affect the infrastructure that we need for the hospital. I mean, for example, if now everyone at Southeast Medical, all the providers are going to be referring imaging studies to Search imaging centers. Well, that changes how our needs are going to be for imaging and other kinds of laboratory. So I'm just trying to figure out how in the planning process, we figure out how to strengthen our alliance with the remaining primary care providers in this town, because this is a really important planning issue. But that's not what this committee is traditionally talked about, which has been just this kind of concrete sort of stuff.
So the service that I'm accustomed to in a study like this would involve all of those factors, all the changes in our competitive environment. It's and the changes in our priorities. So it's not, the expectation would be that we would administration, along with input from the board, would feed all that information into the process so that whoever is completing the study has the full picture of our ongoing and future needs.
But if I could, Mr. Chairman, that's dynamic. So rather than us just sitting here passively saying, well, here's the competitive environment we're in, we're in a position where we can affect the competitive environment by some of our actions. And those are actions, of course, we could be planning and adaptively changing the competitive. So I'm not sure how to bring that up in the planning committee.
So, I think this, so I know that, I know in meetings that I've had with Joe and with Deb, that we've talked about this and, you know, part of the thing is whenever you lose a hospital, a primary care provider, you lose their services where they, you know, give referrals to. So I know Joe has talked with other providers in town and trying to make stronger alliances with them. And I think that is something that we are really going to concentrate on is our strategic onset of making these alliances with our primary care physicians, because they're so important to our hospital. They're so important to every service that we have, whether it's the lab, like you say, or imaging or anything. It's so important. So I think that we are definitely on that path to strengthening these alliances with our current providers that use us and that want to use this. But I think that in my opinion, the way that what Dev has kind of instructed me with Joe on how we're going to go about this is we're going to go and give this to an outside firm of all the information that we have. You know, okay, well, we've lost these two providers right now, so we understand that these two providers won't be, you know, sending us their business anymore. What is our campus supposed to look like, shaped like in the next 5 years, 10 years? What do we need to do and how we need to get there? So part of it's going to be input from staff. Part of it's going to be input from us, the board, telling the company what we want. And then part of it's going to be them actually going out, I believe, and talking to providers in the community and finding out exactly what we need as an organization too as well. So I think that they both kind of go together, but this study for a master plan is something that's a little bit different than the strategic plan of trying to make sure that we hold on to providers. And if I'm wrong, I mean, totally, you know, what do you think, Dr. Ruster?
I think that the pace of change is accelerating faster than I would have expected. And I think that that it's almost a fait accompli. The search will be the driver of the large majority of outpatient medical care in Southeast Alaska, including Juneau, because it's something that was articulated to me probably 6 years ago. I remember talking to the board, and I'm not sure there was anybody on the board at the time. I think Kenny. I remember, were you when I was sitting right here?
Yep.
Yeah, that was a while ago. And so that's happening much faster than I thought. And so with Southeast Medical, which I thought was a few years off. And so Valley Medical, and the big three internist groups, Valley Medical is the biggest, and they've got younger people, so they'll be around longer than Southeast Medical, which is now part of a search facility. They've got 6 providers there. They're the second biggest primary. Then Family Practice is a group of 3 internists and one part-time. So that's a smaller group, and that's the group that we perhaps could align with. And I don't know if this is the committee, this seems like a reasonable committee to talk about strategy. And then there's the pediatric group. There's a large pediatric presence in Vintage, which was Joy Nyhart's old group. They've got a couple of pediatricians there. And then there's the pediatric group downtown. And I don't know what their affiliation is. I know they get a lot of radiographic studies here as well. But, Search, should we talk to Search? Or is Search going to try and buy that group? So, the planning committee needs to be thinking about an assessment, which I think is very reasonable, taking into account our budget, the environment with Search's accelerated desire to sort of control all of outpatient care in Southeast Alaska. And I guess those are the two big things.
I would agree with almost everything Dr. Rasker says. It's just.
Orthopedics, I forgot to mention. That's the other big outlier. Sorry, I knew there was some.
That'd be the other driver. On top of that is if we are able to affiliate with Virginia Mason, any specialty services that would come in, because that'd be the piece that we're not talking about. Without primary care, you can't get the referrals to specialists to even start the process. Whether this is the committee that talks about it, it's kind of a sensitive subject because this is a public meeting, so anything we talk about strategy is just out there. So Search can counteract anything we've done or talk about in this meeting as you've seen them do in the past.
So I guess I'll make a recommendation to you, Joe. And it's that we really set this as a high priority at our strategic planning session that we have coming up in the next couple of months, next month or 2 months.
Mr. Chairman, could I also ask that the staff accelerate whatever talks you're going to have anyway with the existing primary care providers to find out what they want in order to strengthen alliance with us. Because I think Southeast Medical was a real surprise to us. Maybe it needn't have been if we'd been on top of that. I mean, when Joy Nyhart's group went over, that was not a surprise. She'd been talking about that for a long time, and we just let that one go by.
Right. Any other talk on this? Chris?
No, I would only echo the thoughts that you expressed earlier, Joe, about the document itself. I read through it twice, and besides it being dated, I wasn't overly surprised that there seemed to be a lack of detail around some of those recommendations and why those were brought out. But it seems like this discussion is now moved into another important aspect of what the planning committee might be grappling with in the coming months.
Thank you, Chris. I agree with you. This has kind of gone in a little different direction than I expected this part to go with, especially reviewing this large document that was in here and going through it a couple of times because it is such a large document. And so I'm glad to see that this document's going to be updated. Now, just I guess how we want it updated and is what we're. Right, options on and priorities for the use of the ADHD.
That was kind of laid out as a subset of the strategic goals. We went through the multiple options for the ABHC. Some of those were actually outlined in the 2011 or the updated 2021 plan because they talk about physical therapy, they talk about fusion therapy. But I think as we start fleshing this plan out and start moving, as I get quotes, then we start getting a timeline for some of those. I think we revisit what we do with Aurora at that time. So we make sure our plans, all inclusive of these spaces as well.
So in this committee, can we have updates, just bullet points updates on ophthalmology, infusion therapy.
A couple of updates. Yeah, we still working on orthopedics. We have Dr. Wolper signed a contract. His first clinic is on the 27th of January. We're working on some call agreements. The call schedule has been filled out by Global and Joint through the end of March. So we have 3 months before we have to find call coverage or fulfill our call coverage requirements. So they've done that. Ophthalmology, we have scheduled clinics through March, where he is in town on the 15th through the 17th. We're going to have further conversations with Dr. Brunetti, what his future plans look like.
I just want to say that I heard the commercial today on the radio.
So, yeah, we've actually expanded today. He's actually added some additional services. So he's, that's actually going very well from my perspective. What was the third one you wanted to update on? Infusion therapy. Well, looking at oncology, Dr. Wyden retired. His big ceremony was in December. We signed a contract with CompHealth to bring Dr. Vishnu back. He's an oncologist that has practiced in Juneau in the past. We had an agreement we had tentative conversations with Dr. Robertson, Mandy Robertson. She was unable to meet the time frame to fulfill the leading of Dr. Wyden. So we got Dr. Vishnu in there for oncology. For infusion therapy, we're kind of still at max capacity. I know they're trying to get patients in as soon as possible, but that space is at its limits at this point. So in order to grow infusion therapy to move that forward, we would have to enact some of the strategic plan initiatives, either grow that space, which includes adding hoods, because the pharmacy component of that is also kind of at its limits as well.
That's the one that's about $1 million, a little over $1 million.
Yeah, that was the $1 million proposal. That was some of that was hood, some of that was updating the space, getting it ready for infusion therapy. But we haven't moved on any of that at this point.
And then what are we doing with the old Rainforest Recovery Building right now? What's going on with that?
We're updating the WMU portion of the building, which is the most recently updated piece of it to be our orthopedics clinic. So they're in the process of getting that space ready right now. Some of those, whereas we look at that space, some of that will tie into this, but future thoughts on that would be additional clinic space. If we're able to get a contract in place with Virginia Mason and they can bring specialists in, we will need clinic space. They cannot be in the Aurora building because they are, unless they're partly employees and somehow, it depends on the contract gets set up, but most likely they will be in that building as well.
We're still using it for staging areas too.
It's still being used for the asbestos remediation project at this point, so it's kind of used.
Could I just ask Dr. Vishnu, where does he normally, he or she?
He practiced in the Seattle area for a long time. He actually did some oncology services through, I think, Virginia Mason up here. He liked it up here. Staff liked him. He's well regarded. He had moved down to Florida for a few years for some family issues, moved back to Seattle, and then that's when he reached out to us, letting us know he had continued interest in providing services in June.
And then what portion full time?
He's basically just a direct replacement of Dr. White. He'll be providing he'll do 5 days of clinic a month, where Dr. White was only doing 4, so we'll add a day.
Thank you.
Through the
Thank you.
chair.
Yes.
Question with Planned Parenthood closing, is that an option or something we would want to look at? That building?
So I know that Planned Parenthood has reached out to us probably 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know. We can talk with Joe, and you can maybe talk to Bob Bartholomew or someone like that.
I'm going to initiate discussions if you guys are interested in that, just to see what the interest is down there, whether it be purchase or rental or something.
Great idea, Shelley. We'll start some conversation with them. Dr. Rester.
No, agreed. Thank you.
All right, any comments? I think that's it with the priorities of the VHS. Team can move really forward here. Any comments, committee comments or questions?
In the non-committee. I'm a non-committee member.
Non-committee questions?
One of the things that we didn't talk about is moving forward with what the timeline would be moving forward with the contract for the facilities master plan update. And the length of time that staff needs and the board needs to accumulate the information. When are we going to talk about it again? So that we can actually include as much as we possibly can in the RFP.
Okay, well, there's two avenues we can go. If it's a GPO contracted service, we'd have to do an RFP. So that'd be something we'd have to discuss. And I could move this and I could work with you directly on this as I get the information coming in, what meeting we pull this back into for consideration. So I'll try to move this as fast as possible because this will be a long drawn out process.
Yes.
Because there'll be on-site, there'll be meetings with staff, there'll be meetings with board, community members. It's going to be providers.
Provider meetings.
So I'm trying to get information as fast as I can. So I'll be, as we start our weekly meetings again, we'll make it to discuss.
Then we'll get good scope.
Yeah.
Project will be.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
So I guess I'll just get an update on the 7th. February 7th, I guess, so we have it before that.
Yeah, what,
If I have any information before any of these other meetings we have, I'll try to bring them forward. If I have something before the board meeting, I get it to my report. That's just verbally.
Any other questions or comments from committee members or non-committee members? All right, so our next meeting is February 7th. I believe that's a Friday, right? We'll be out of town. Have another day that would work better for you, Dr. Oster.
I might leave on Thursday evening, so I guess Thursday afternoon would be better.
We currently have that Thursday booked for our A3 presentations up to the 1 o'clock hour. It's after that.
Then 14, the following week, February 14th.
Of course, clashes with Valentine's Day.
It does.
That's a full.
I'll be out of the country on the 14th.
Finance committee is on the 14th.
That's it, okay.
Herman, I don't think I'm available, either the 13th or the 14th.
Yeah, that's a finance.
I can try and call in. It's okay.
There's 4 people on this committee, so I think if one person is missing, we're gonna be okay. We can always fill it too. So we'll just leave it at noon on the 7th. Chris, that's good for you.
Yeah, that's good for me.
All right, I think with that, we are adjourned. Next meeting, we'll see everybody February 7th at noon.
Thanks everyone.
Okay.